think
it's raining, it's pouring, the old man is snoring. He bumped his head and couldn't get up in the morning.
Because, as I said, media organisations, BBC,
okay, I'm used to the rain.
we
It's
were
the national weather for a reason.
too quick, I think, to accept that first additional explanation. We have that hands up.
There is a question then about why banks in general, Coots in particular, NatWest more generally, want to do this. And it's been pointed out again at the Guardian, I was quoting a second ago today as well, that Coots has had in its window campaigns against, in favour of, I should say, International Day against homophobia and transphobia. They've had rainbow bunting, they've had pro-gay slogans, they've also supported Marcus Rashford, the footballers' campaigns during Black History Month. Why is a bank that banks with some people with some pretty dodgy records wanting to do this?
It's too good a question to answer, and then Alison Rose's mantra has always been inclusivity is at the heart of our organisation, and inclusive means inclusive, full stop.
Would anyone know that Farage would be even a member if they didn't do this? Or would they care?
It's done a pretty stunning job of turning NatWest round. It's important.
I'm sure there's worse people in the world that have bank accounts.
As taxpayers, the government still owns 38% of the bank. But this is a big one. How much did she know and read will determine whether she loves or not, I feel.
Final, very brief thought, if you would, Philip. For NatWest, should we read the other big banks that we know, or do you think something different is happening?
I think we need to find them. It's very hard to answer that on the basis of what we know. We've heard, I'm not sure we've heard the full picture yet.
Philip Organ, thank you for helping us to get closer to that full picture. The banking writer, former non-executive director of TSB. 3 minutes to 8, let's go over to Simon for the weather. Hi Simon.
Hi Amble, yes, we've got some wet weather on the weekend, over the weekend, some strong winds to go with that as well. An area of low pressure will move its way in, but for today, it's a case really of some sunny spells and some showers. Now for southwest and southeast England, we start off this morning with some sunshine. The cloud though is going to increase, so by lunchtime it will be turning quite overcast for many, and there'll be some showers moving their way in as well. Fairly well scattered initially, but becoming a bit more persistent as we go through into this evening. And maximum temperatures 18 to 21 degrees Celsius, a bit cooler than it was yesterday. Across Wales, the Midlands and eastern England, a little bit of sunshine, some brightness out there at the moment. Generally speaking, fairly cloudy. Some showers across northern areas this morning. Those will drift away further southward as the day goes on. Highs of 15 to 19 Celsius. And across northern England, quite cloudy with some showers this morning. They're moving their way south and eastward. There'll be some sunny spells developing, and still the odd shower in northwest England, but most of them I think will be to the northeast of England during the afternoon, so it could be heavy and thundery. Highs of 16 or 17. Then across Scotland and Northern Ireland, again some sunshine this morning across central and western areas of Scotland. More cloud elsewhere, some showers affecting the far northeast, and more persistent rain gradually moving its way into Northern Ireland as the day goes on. Highs of 15 or 16 Celsius.
Thank you very much indeed. Now normally we talk to Alex from South in some distant village. She's here with us in the studio to tell us about tonight's Any Questions. Welcome.
Thank you, and what a pleasure it is to be here in the flesh. Been here since the early hours watching those election results roll in, but I shall shortly be jumping on a train and heading to Norwich to our venue for tonight's programme, which is the Quadrum Institute, a centre for pioneering scientists and medics on Norwich Research Park. With me will be the Home Office Minister Chris Philp, the Senior Labour MP Dame Margaret Hodge, the political commentator and writer Tim Montgomery, and academic and author Dr Maya Goodfellow. If I was a betting woman, I'd reckon we may well find ourselves chewing over those election results with our panel later, but as ever, we will be in the hands of our audience, up to them what they ask. Certainly no shortage of subjects to talk about, so listen if you can at 8 p.m.
It's going to be lively. Thank you very much, Dina. It's good to see you, and best of luck in Norwich. Coming up after 8 o'clock, we'll have the chairman of the Conservative Party, Greg Hands, joining us to discuss last night's election result, and I'll be speaking to the mother of Olivia Brown.
You're listening to Today with Omar Rajan and Nick Robinson. Good morning, it's 8 o'clock on Friday the 21st of July. The headlines this morning: Labour and the Liberal Democrats are celebrating after overturning two huge Conservative majorities, the by-elections in North Yorkshire and Somerset. Rishi Sunak has avoided a third defeat by holding on to Boris Johnson's old seat in West London. The latest figures show the public finances in a slightly better state than predicted last month, but it was still the third biggest June deficit on record. Some NHS agency workers in England say they haven't been
roads this morning in Sproston Green, queuing traffic, A54 Holmes Chapel Road in both directions. That's near to the Fox and Hounds pub. And Top of Smallthorne Bank busy on the roundabouts there. Hanley Road, High Lane, Moreland Road junctions. Sheer volume of traffic. And we had a problem on Trinity Street or Banley. There was an incident earlier on between Marsh Street and Lower Foundry Street, if that's your route. If you know of any problems, get in touch 0800 121 8080.
On the BBC Sounds app, on your smart. Here in Selby and Ainsty, the Conservatives were on the receiving end of a massive political blow. They went into this by-election with a majority of over 20,000. Even that cushion couldn't stop a Labour victory after a 24% swing from the Tories. The significance wasn't lost on the winning candidate Keir Mather, who took the seat with a majority of more than 4,000.
I know what an honour this is, and I am humbled by this opportunity to serve. In this campaign, we have rewritten the rules on where Labour can win.
And in Somerset, there was a colossal 29% swing to the Liberal Democrats. They turned Somerton and Frome from a 19,000 Conservative majority to an 11,000 majority of their own. The new MP is Sarah Dyke.
A stunning and historic victory for the Liberal Democrats. And it shows once and for all, the Liberal Democrats are back in the West Country.
There was better news for the Conservatives in Boris Johnson's old seat of Uxbridge and South Ruislip, where they were defending a majority of more than 7,000. The expansion of London's ultra-low emissions zone, which imposes charges on highly polluting vehicles, was a significant factor. The Conservative winner, Steve Tuckwell, who survived a 7% swing to Labour, felt that issue gave him the edge.
This wasn't the campaign Labour expected, and Keir Starmer and his Mayor Sadiq Khan need to sit up and listen to the Uxbridge and South Ruislip residents.
So Labour, the Conservatives and the Liberal Democrats all took one seat each overnight, while some parties will be feeling much happier than others.
Never does well in by-elections, but it could have been worse.
Backdrop was really challenging. They were hard fought. We had a huge number of people going out and making out the Conservative message. But I think in particular in Selby, the context of one of my colleagues decided to resign so quickly was really unhelpful and really not welcomed by local electors.
Labour's Deputy Leader Angela Rayner told us the party wouldn't get complacent.
Selby was a historic, great result for us, but we're not taking anything for granted. But I think also Uxbridge shows you that we've still got more work to do, and it also shows you that obviously ULEZ was a major issue in that by-election. I mean, there's no getting away from that. If you look at the results in the 3 by-elections, it's pretty clear that that had an impact on the vote.
The Deputy Leader for Liberal Democrats, Daisy Cooper, believes their victory in Somerset sets them up for more gains in the region at the general election.
In the West Country alone, there are around 15 seats with smaller majorities than the one that we've just overturned. There are seats like, Chippenham and Cheltenham and Taunton Deane and places like that that we're really going to be targeting. But amongst those 15 seats, we're going to look at the result that we've had just this morning, and we'll be looking at what other prospects there might be for us in that area.
With his analysis of the night's results, here's our political editor, Chris Mason.
This set of elections amounted to a single question. Just how badly did the Conservatives do? The answer, very badly, but not as badly as they had feared. The prospect of a crushing 3-0 defeat, beaten everywhere, averted. Labour managed to win, and win big, really big, in rural North Yorkshire, the kind of spot some distance from usually fertile political territory for them, and yet they lost in northwest London, where they'd expected to win. The power of a single issue, seemingly huge and expanding low emission zone in a city with a Labour mayor. The Tory obliteration in Somerset will sow panic among many Conservatives in the southwest of England. The Liberal Democrat win was emphatic. This morning, the scope for any Tory comfort anywhere
is very slender, but not as slender as it might have been.
Public finance figures released this morning show that the government borrowed £18.5 billion last month to bridge the gap between spending and taxation. That's the third biggest June deficit on record, but smaller than analysts and the government's official forecasters had expected. Our correspondent Darshini David has more details.
Providing energy bill support was always going to bump up public spending, and interest payments on the government's debt too has increased due to higher inflation and interest rates. But bigger tax receipts meant a smaller deficit in June than expected. For inflation has meant an increasing number facing higher tax bills, given that the threshold at which different rates of income tax apply aren't being raised in line with the cost of living. Those receipts also reflect a more resilient economy than some reckoned. Separate official figures showed the volume of retail sales rising by 0.7% in June. 3 months into the financial year, the public finances appear on a better track than the official forecasts, leaving some to query if the Chancellor may be able to afford pre-election tax cuts and meet his own self-imposed rules. But it's early days.
Some NHS workers haven't received the extra payment awarded by the government as part of the latest pay deal in England. A lump sum of more than £1,600 went to nurses, paramedics and other staff on top of their 5% rise. But those who work for the internal agency known as the Bank haven't got it. Our health editor Hugh Pym reports.
The NHS Bank offers health staff the chance to work flexible hours, providing temporary cover to fill rota gaps for trusts. It's emerged that these NHS workers have not been given the one-off payment of at least £1,655, which was part of the latest pay deal in England. Two trusts, Yorkshire Ambulance Service and Northumbria Healthcare, have made the payment to bank staff, though the funding came from their own resources. The Unite Union has called on the government to allocate cash to all trusts to do the same. A spokesperson said it was a cynical ploy to allow employers to make the payments but not fund them. The Department of Health said the deal, agreed with most unions, involved individual employers determining pay and conditions for those on locally managed contracts.
India has banned exports of most white rice after heavy monsoon rains damaged crops in parts of the country. The move is likely to drive up prices on global food markets. The head of the CIA has said that Vladimir Putin may still seek revenge on the leader of the mercenary Wagner group who led a failed mutiny a month ago. William Burns was speaking at the Aspen Security Forum in the US, from where our security correspondent Gordon Carrera reports.
The CIA director said that Vladimir Putin was trying to buy time while he worked out how to deal with Evgeny Prigozhin. He said Russia's leader would probably try to separate Mr. Prigozhin from his Wagner mercenary group, which still had its uses for Moscow. As part of a deal with the Kremlin to end his mutiny, the Wagner leader agreed to go into exile in Belarus. Vladimir Putin was someone who generally thought revenge was a dish best served cold, William Burns said, adding that he would be surprised if Mr. Prigozhin escaped further retribution. If I were Prigozhin, I wouldn't fire my food taster, the CIA chief added.
The government is facing more pressure to allow the Parthenon sculptures to be returned to Greece, with a poll suggesting almost two-thirds of people in the UK would support the move as part of a cultural exchange. British Museum says talks with Greece about the sculptures, originally known here as the Elgin Marbles, are ongoing and constructive. Culture editor Katie Razzle reports.
The UK government's position remains the same. It's opposed to the permanent return of the Parthenon sculptures to Greece and has no plans to change the law to allow that to happen. But the pressure to find a resolution to a 200-year-long row continues. In February, George Osborne, who chairs the British Museum Trustees, told the BBC he was seeking a more cooperative arrangement with Greece, which was a win-win. Now, a YouGov poll of more than 2,000 adults, shared first with the BBC, suggests 64% of Brits would be in favour of returning the sculptures if British museums were lent other blockbuster artefacts in return. It was commissioned by the Parthenon Project, which lobbies for a cultural partnership between the UK and Greece. The Conservative peer, Lord Vasey, who chairs its advisory board, called the poll a real shot in the arm for negotiations.
Katie Mercer reporting.
Jane, thank you. It's 8:10. Happiness, someone once said, is reality minus expectations. So given that all the predictions were that the Conservatives would lose 3 by-elections last night, you can understand why Conservatives might be a little bit cheered by the fact they only lost 2, holding on to Boris Johnson's former constituency, Uxbridge. But there were 2 huge by-election losses, 2 huge swings against the Tories and in favour of their 2 key opponents. It seems that voters don't need a lot of educating to know how to tactically vote to damage the government. In Somerset, the Lib Dems had a huge victory. David Fothergill is the leader of the Conservative group in Somerset, Somerton and Frome. He says the collapse of the party's votes did not reflect the efforts of people like him in the local party.
When the tide is against you, both nationally but very much locally. I mean, this has the circumstances here in Somerton and Frome would be very different to the other parts of the country that are out to vote tonight, because we've had that local element of an MP really that went rogue. Very different circumstances. We worked very hard and we will continue to do that.
Now, when you travel up north, you travel to Selby and Ainsty, you see not the Liberal Democrats having a victory, but the Labour Party with a huge swing again, over 20%. The biggest swing since Tony Blair was trying to get into government in the 90s. Their man, the new MP for Selby, 25-year-old Keir Mather, sees a new dawn breaking.
The people of Selby and Ainsty have sent a clear message. For too long, Conservatives up here and in Westminster have failed us. And today that changes. It's time for a fresh start.
So what then of that victory for the Conservatives in Uxbridge and South Ruislip? Was that evidence that people don't really like Keir Starmer? Was it evidence that they do really like Rishi Sunak? Well, let's listen to the man who won the seat, Steve Tuckwell, the new MP who succeeds Boris Johnson. He put his success down to London's Labour Mayor.
Has lost Labour this election in his... And we know that it was his damaging and costly ULEZ policy that lost them this election.
But there will be people, of course, who say that that victory for the Conservatives offers a glimmer of hope to the party. We'll talk to the party chairman in just a second. First, though, let's hear from Henry Hill, the deputy editor of Conservative Home, the website written by and read by Conservative supporters, who spoke to us earlier on the programme and had this warning for his party.
It's really important that the Conservative Party takes this for the wake-up call that it is. It's also a sign, I think, for Conservatives that you can run against Labour where Labour are in power. In London, to an extent, the Conservatives are an opposition party because you have Labour in the mayoralty. And so there's a lot of vulnerable Welsh seats. I think the Welsh Tories will be looking at this carefully.